Welcome to Revenue Unscripted, the show for B2B founders, CEOs, advisors, and leaders, where we unpack what really drives stronger revenue and margins. Not just product, not just process, but people and behaviors. I'm your host, Jennica Dixon, president at Slattery Sales Group, and together we'll dive into how real organizations build high-performing sales cultures, avoid costly talent mistakes, and turn complex deals into predictable growth. Today's guest is Matt Johnson, a revenue practitioner with quota-carrying experience across SMB, mid-market, and enterprise outbound sales. Long before holding a quota, he built resilience through door knocking, cold outreach, and even a 2-year Spanish-speaking mission in Chile. He has worked inside bootstrap startups, VC-backed companies, public organizations, and post-acquisition environments, giving him a sharp perspective on what actually scales and what quietly breaks as companies grow. Today, Matt is the owner of an independent health and life insurance brokerage serving families and business owners, and he believes deeply that when sales is done right, it becomes a powerful force for clarity, trust, and long-term growth. Matt, we are so excited to have you here. Welcome to Revenue Unscripted.
Thank you. Very happy to be here, Jenica.
It's a privilege to have you here. I am thrilled. I'm excited to dive into so many of the points that I just mentioned. But before we get into it, can you just tell the listeners, where are you calling in from today and what does your work look like today?
Absolutely. So I'm calling in from Houston, Texas. This is a place where my family here and local to us. We're growing our 2 little boys in a fun environment here in Texas. We're excited to take them to their first rodeo. Um,
Ooh.
yes. So it's about time. We've been here for about 3 years. So the work I do today is to provide health and life insurance options for families primarily and business owners across 23 states. I do that typically from the office in my own home. I will typically find in location places to meet with referral partners um, and to go to different networking events so that I can be more present in the community and gather an understanding of what's actually going on with how people are managing their finances today.
Nice. And you have experience not only building your own business, but selling before that. But going even deeper into your origin story, if I recall, you were actually on a path toward physical therapy
Mhm.
before you pivoted. And so I'm very curious. I mean, it takes a special person to be in healthcare at all, and a pivot from healthcare into the business world and selling, and all of the movie depictions of sales as being very ruthless and
Yeah.
hyper focused on the money. I am very curious because this is something near and dear to my own heart. What did you learn about people and pain and empathy from your healthcare training that you still use today in your sales conversations?
Oh, it is very foundational, I think, to what I do as a sales professional. The one thing that I really loved, this is where it got me interested in physical therapy, was when I had the opportunity to take an internship with a family physical therapist at his clinic. And to me, I was so interested because my brother and his wife, they were talking about all these different cases that they were seeing, noticing, there's so many patients that come in with this problem and they're giving these symptoms, but with a little bit of digging, we found out it was something else completely unrelated that the client never thought about. And so, because of the way they're able to dive in and learn about the body, how it works and its systems, being a scientific kid like I am, like was, it's allowed me to find something wanted to dive into and do more to help people in that way that so many people overlook. And so when I was diving in, or do you want to take a
No,
moment
I
to
was
ask?
just saying
Or
that's awesome. I'm loving this.
yeah, and when I had the opportunity to take that program route to go through my bachelor studies, get all those prerequisites done as part of my bachelor's degree, and make those applications to physical therapy schools, I was actively interviewing different people in the field to understand, okay, what's going on? What are the real problems happening? How could I fit myself in as I'm going to graduate school? What could I be studying about, thinking? And over and over, I was getting a lot of different interesting remarks about, well, they're cutting back a little bit on funding for physical therapists. It's becoming a lot more harder for physical therapists to help patients because they get to them when it's at a chronic stage, for their diseases or injuries that are happening. And so it's putting us at a difficult place to be able to help people. So so that is why they ended up coming out with physical therapy, the degree itself only being a a doctorate or a PhD level program. It used to be bachelor's, associates, masters, and they did away with all that so that they could help to create a better persona for physical therapists to help more people as a practitioner. So because you had to be now a practitioner at a doctorate level degree, requires more training, more understanding of the systems to understand full body. What's going on with the body? How does it work regularly? And we call that within a movement system. Within that movement system, how does things operate at a cellular level? And then how do things work out at a more larger level? Right. Most people think of physical therapists as people who help folks who are, rehabilitating after surgery, it being painful and not fun to deal with. But over and over, I think one of the things that keep developing from that field was there's a lot of people coming out with chronic illnesses that we keep missing. So that got me more excited. Like this is exactly what I will look for. I want to look for these deep problems that people can't figure out. So fast forward into graduate school, in the beautiful month of May 2020, COVID hits.
Oh no.
Yep, slams right into to school. Everything that was meant to be in person is all online, and I was open to it. They quite handled it really well. When I was diving in through that, I developed a lot of skills and did a lot of practice work to understand. Okay, here's this part of the body. How does it work? How can I teach others how to do this? Over and over again, developing that skill of problem solving, critical thinking, and the systems based approach. As I went to the year mark, it got to a point where, as I was doing those interviews with people to figure out, okay, what's going on? How are things going? It just got worse and worse. They're cutting back again. Our pay, starting pay for a salary as physical therapist is going to be this, and you have to fit in 7 patients per hour to be able to help people. And I saw the trajectory way things are going, and everything else that's happening. I'm like, I'm putting this much debt into what I felt like to be almost like a failing industry. So, where I pivoted and put myself in a business world completely different from anything that I'd talked learned about in the medical fields.
It
Um,
seems different, but everything you're describing so far, I'm resonating with.
right, yep, okay, exactly. And so what I you don't find very many, medical professionals becoming business professionals at all. That's kind of one of the jokes about many doctors is little they know about business, and they try to make business decisions. Um, but when I got to the point where I was starting to see myself in the world, within business, I got a I got a basically a text from one of my, church folks. He runs a venture capital company, and at the time, um I did had no clue what venture capital was, nothing about investments, and the further I got into it and learned, and he allowed me to have, this intermediary role to help and oversee their operations, their onboarding, how they run, an accelerator to help invest in, startups and founders to get that funding from seed to Series B, and to get the next step. It was really exciting hearing their different stories, how they help people, what problems they're seeing in the industry, and how they're able to make money off of it.
And I wanna double click on something that you said a
Mhm.
little earlier too, where in medicine, the patient comes to you and there seems to be one problem. Let's say one particular problem, maybe a preliminary diagnosis, maybe a preliminary self-diagnosis, this is the problem. But
Mm,
when you dive in and you dig deeper and you understand what's really driving that pain, what's really driving that problem, you find that the real problem isn't the problem that was first diagnosed. And I
exactly.
I
Mhm.
just wanna highlight that because there's a lot of insight there
Mhm.
And it's very true in the business world as well. When we're running businesses, when we're running any kind of operation out in the marketplace,
Mhm.
sometimes we can fall into the trap of self-diagnosing. And our prospective clients do the same thing, where they think that they've got one problem and they might come to us for help. And if we just take that at face value,
Mhm.
we're doing them a disservice. And they may end up
Mhm.
holding on to that pain, holding on to that injury even longer than they should. And
Yeah.
this happens to me in consulting, where a prospective client will come to me and say, "This is the problem and I need your help." If I don't dig in and question, "Is this really the problem?" Then I mean, it'd be like a doctor accepting a self Google diagnosis. Like, okay, I've looked it up on Google. And I say this because my mother was an infectious disease doctor before she retired, and so she had a lot of
Oh, yeah.
patients coming in who say like, "Okay, I've looked it up. This is what I have. All I need is the prescription." um, I have a few questions. May I ask you a few questions? And there she is in a discovery call, just like every other sales professional out in the marketplace. But I wanted to
Yeah.
highlight your
Right.
observation there, that what we think is the problem for that first diagnosis isn't necessarily that
Yeah,
real problem.
it's wild. Okay, so I'll take some. So I had a really good education from BYU, Idaho. That's where I got this platform to have developed that thinking, understanding, and also going to University of St. Augustine for Houston for health sciences in Austin, Texas. We talked a lot about this, and that's what really got me fueled. Um, there's so many patients that come to us, and it's but come to them, and they have this diagnosis. I've got lower back pain. This is probably one of the most common, very poorly, properly diagnosed and treated to date, I'd say. It's typically lower back pain. You've got a ton of different organs back there. Um, you could easily have one person's written down similar symptoms for what could end up being just muscle pain and soreness and tenderness, to being kidney issues, to being this joint that's really tiny, and there's a little, you just need to basically readjust that part and strengthen different muscles to better support. Or it could be totally unrelated to the back, and it ends up just being an issue with your knees or your ankle being a certain way, and you doing too much of this work and it exacerbating other minor issues otherwise in the lower back. So every time, we go through that, they have very helpful frameworks to be able to ask questions and to frame the problem to better diagnose the issue. And every time there's a treatment, you have to reevaluate and figure out, okay, is this really the problem? These are the findings we're having, and continually finding to make sure that this is still the right solution for the client. Um,
Right.
so taking
I
that into my approach has been very useful.
I love that. And it's funny how in selling, uh, I often joke that there are two things that will never tilt the needle, that will never move the needle in your sale: telling the other person stuff, because as sales people, we are not neutral parties in the transaction. Like, the other person knows that there's some connection between the size of our paycheck and our ability to drag them through the pain of change. So they know we're not a neutral party. Telling them stuff isn't going to move the needle. And the
Right.
second thing that doesn't move the needle in a sales transaction is good stuff, because we typically don't go through the pain of change for good stuff.
Mm.
And a lot of studies show that, like, the influence of pain on the brain and the avoidance of discomfort is on, I want to say on a scale of like 1,000x greater than our desire to go after a pleasure. And of course, what are the two things that sellers are typically equipped to go out in the marketplace and do? Go tell prospects all about our good stuff, savings,
Mm.
benefits, kitties, rainbows,
Features.
unicorns. Exactly.
Mhm.
Let's go talk about all these good things. And a lot of times they're encouraged, they're equipped with a slide deck and they're encouraged to go out into the marketplace and tell prospects all about our good stuff. But those are the two things that won't move the needle in
Yeah.
especially a complex sale, when you've got multiple players in the cast of characters, multiple parts of their decision making process. Uh, that's not going to move the needle. And as
No.
you're talking, I'm thinking of the difference between a seller who's equipped to tell and go out and talk about good stuff versus a seller who is equipped with the mindset of asking great questions. Like, we're going to put away the demo. We're not going to pull out the demo as soon as they tell us,
Mhm.
I really need a system that does XYZ for me. And you're like, yes, I have XYZ system. Let's pull out the demo. No, 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 no. Put it away. We're not going to do that.
Ask more questions.
Let's ask a bunch of questions. Really, what's
Yeah,
going on to drive this? Like, nobody wakes up
exactly.
in the morning and says, this is a great day to go through the pain of change. So, what's really happening? And it is a disservice to our prospective clients if we don't ask those deeper diagnostic questions. I mean, the example you just shared of,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be kidney stones or it could be the shoes that you're wearing. I, heaven help us if we don't actually dive in and determine the real driver
Yeah.
behind the pain and understand what we can actually bring to that equation. And I love that perspective. And I'm curious, when you got started in the venture capital world, what
Mhm.
surprised you the most, especially around selling? Like finding out that sales is everywhere in that world.
Oh gosh. Um, so this is at Sputnik ATX. They'll text me if I say Sputnik, but that was the venture capital accelerator that I was working in, and I was working under Oksana, and it was a wonderful ride to see their development. I think it was really fascinating to see that after having so many applications, so many people wanting to get money, right, to be able to fund their business. And what was taught while they were there in that Accelerate program, it was an Accelerate program of, I believe, about 10 weeks long. Okay. So it's rigorous every single day they're there. And they're tracking metrics to see what they're doing with that funding to utilize it to put it to use and grow their company. It was really fascinating to find out that the basis of the whole curriculum were based around sales skills.
Oh,
Sales skills that people as founders, very nerdy, they love their stuff, they're excited about their product and what they do, but they just don't know how to sell it.
right.
Mhm. And so through that process and learning and taking understanding of having discussions about, you know, what does it take to get from point A to B? And the answer to most of those questions was having better sales skills and doing it the right way and not trying to reinvent the wheel, honestly, because there's a lot of people out there who've done it really well, track their success, and can be leaned on to do it better. As part of an accelerator, not only did they get the knowledge and foundation and funding to start, the founders themselves would be involved to give them the coaching. And then after that 10-week period, they kind of send them off and kind of teach them, all right, now go figure it out. Um, I think in these instances, as they're developing and growing their business, I could only imagine what it could do for them if they had a business coach or a sales coach to help continue to work in those habits and skills and track that with them. Um, but that's me just kind of thinking about it nowadays, now that I've gone through some of those processes myself.
Right. And you've done a lot of door knocking in your career. You have experienced rejection. You have been in the trenches as a business development rep, and you've been in a variety of industries. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned when we were talking earlier that there is a difference between like small business, small to medium enterprises, and enterprise outbound selling, that there are some subtle differences
Mhm.
in the outbound work required in small to medium sized businesses and then in enterprises. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. So to kind of show you where I've been, I've worked for Accenture, yeah, global consulting firm. They recently hired. They worked with different companies so that they could have the access and reach to different clients who are needing their services. When I was working in that arrangement, I got first as a BDR involved with SMB markets and SMB markets, kind of getting a very quick sense for the problem, pain points, and typical things that people need as to why the services and clients were looking for the help that they needed. So while working for an outsourced marketing company, we got a lot of involvement with several different clients to see, here's the framework we have to do our sales stuff, and here's the things that we need to know to really sell your work. And with that plug and play method, we're able to really help a lot of people and solve a lot of problems. Um, some of the things I noticed with the SMB market is that's very similar to enterprise. Is there's always pain points, there's always decision makers, there's always a way to reach them, right? Typically, SMB is going to be a lot easier on the phone and Facebook side. Enterprise is going to be strictly through who you know, what you know, and who you are, and getting to the
Right.
right, getting right through the right um, call centers of the arena to find out how to get them, and especially LinkedIn. Those were very key tools to use that we're able to break in. It was always emphasized that there is no point in bringing to the table, "Here, I've got something I need to sell you because you're a business and you're on my list." It was always better to take a moment and really get personal with them a little bit just to find out, "Hey, I'm a real person. I've got this really short purpose. Not everyone needs this, but I wanna understand if this would be a proper fit for you or not." And both markets really took well to that. They don't wanna waste their time. They only wanna work with things that are relevant and timely, and if you're gonna come across as salesy, jumping to solutions too quick, not asking enough questions to really understand the problem and the situation, those always went through spectacularly well. Um, you can almost depend on it to go well.
Wow.
But until you take that moment to ask those questions and get a little bit more consultative in your approach with sales, very many people were very risk averse and just did not want to take the time because they felt like they were being sold to again, not really cared about.
Right. And that's it's funny, that's back to the medical background. Caring for the other human can get you a lot of distance in an engagement. Actually caring about the other person, listening to them, asking questions. I It's funny, a lot of the sellers that we work with, especially if they're relatively new, maybe they came from a consulting background or they come from a subject matter expertise background, they get
Mhm.
a little bit nervous around asking a ton of questions. And, there's an art to doing it gently and well.
Yeah,
But they get
true.
a little bit nervous about it. Maybe mom told them never to talk to strangers and don't ask too many questions. And now here they are having to go out in the marketplace and ask strangers a whole bunch of questions. And they get a little
Mhm.
uncomfortable with that.
Yeah,
And we always remind them people don't mind being understood. People really do not mind when you're seeking to understand them. They're
yeah,
gonna work with you. If
it's
if
true.
you're genuine and you're trying to understand them, they're
It's
gonna
true.
work with you. They pay consultants a whole lot of money to come in and do what? Ask a million questions. So,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not the end of the world to go ask questions. So I'm curious, as you've got that experience in the accelerator, you've seen both SMB sales and enterprise sales. If you could tell an aspiring founder one thing about how enterprise selling actually works, if they've never done it before, what would it be?
Ooh, yeah, I would say get really clear about what your product can and can't do. Get really clear about your ideal customer. Understand them, their questions. For people who are using it now, how is it really working? What about it is getting them to want to buy? What do they see the value in? What problems are we solving for them? Always going back to that customer base. Um, and then if you see any changes, then continue to plug in those changes and look into uh, then finding more people to fill your business that will actually like it. Because I've seen a lot of businesses. I'm doing a lot of behind the scenes interviews with sales folks. They can tell the sales folks, the good ones, when the company they're working for is not putting their customers' interest at heart. There's metrics they can utilize to determine that. And I've talked to a few that said, "Yeah, this business is going under. They're telling us to load our sales funnel, and all the customers are leaving, and they're not taking the time to understand why." Um, and I'm actively looking for other opportunities right now.
Wow,
Mhm.
What you're describing is something that we have also seen in the marketplace. I wanted I want to unpack this a little bit.
Mhm.
What are some signs when a leadership team has drifted away from the customer? You just said I think a couple of them. There are customers leaving and they aren't digging into why.
Mhm.
What are some other signs that a leadership team has drifted away from the customer?
That's an excellent question. Let me go grab my notes from the conversation. I'd be happy to share some of the
Awesome.
details, yes.
Because
Uh,
what you're describing is real. I have there are some early warning signs, and, we've seen this go down as well where the sales team is tasked with filling up the top of the funnel, and they've gotta make up for business that's going out the back door, but you get to a point where there isn't enough business coming in to make up for the business going out the back door, and those who
yeah.
are leaving are talking, and
Yes,
they're
yes,
scaring away the new ones. So I'd be very curious to hear what are some of those signs if you've got
yes.
those.
Let me see if I can pull that up here real quick.
Mhm.
Here
Yeah, and it's
is
surprising how hard it can be to keep the customer in mind, and because
oh, yeah.
when you're leading a company and you've got a lot of different ways to do something, we've got 10 possible paths forward. Which one do we choose? We've got a lot of places where we have to make choices.
And you got little time.
Yeah, very little time, and you got a bunch of internal politics telling you should do this or you should do that. It can be really hard to keep that compass focused
Yeah.
on the North Star of what does the customer say, and that's a challenge.
Especially when you get to a point I've noticed in larger companies where they get to a point where there's this culture of, "I gotta keep my job somehow. I'm just gonna keep dishing out fluff." Um,
Yes.
but the particular, give me a second. There he is. There's 2 there's 2 things that we looked at. They're called CACs, so customer acquisition cost,
Sure.
and there's another one called it's like it's like renewal rate or something else that has to do with
Oh,
metric. Trying to find that. Um, it's not coming up right away.
interesting. So,
So,
is it when the customer acquisition costs are trending upward? Is that a red flag?
yep, that's one
Oh,
red flag that he's noticed on his side in the sales field. And then there was another one. It doesn't show me the name. Um,
sure.
I think just noticing that there's, now, of course, layoffs. That's always easy to note that. Or if there's a lot of outsourcing, if you're cutting customer success budget.
Yes. I'm gonna go ahead and highlight that one. I have seen that go down in the marketplace also. And in fact, this takes me to my next question that I wanted to open up with you, which is I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned seeing this in the marketplace, and you can tell me if
Mhm,
I'm wrong, but I have seen this go down before where a company does something very well, and because they do well, they become a target for acquisitions, and they get
mhm,
acquired by another company that comes in, and sometimes what the acquiring company thinks it is isn't it. What they think the value is that their newly acquired company is bringing to the marketplace might be what it appears on the surface, but back to the deeper diagnostics, what actually is driving their success in the marketplace is stuff that you can't necessarily see on first glance and maybe doesn't even come out with great due diligence because at Slattery, one of the things that we're always telling our clients is sometimes what sets you apart of the marketplace is so deeply embedded in your business model. It's how you do what you do. When your competitors can do similar things, but you somehow execute it better and can prove it, that's when your excellence is somehow embedded in your business model. And what
mhm,
you just described, Matt, was something that we've seen before where sometimes that competitive edge in the marketplace is around customer success. It's how we onboard our customers, it's how we support them after onboarding. It never ends up on strategic plans. It's not the thing that we sell, but it is part of what sets us apart in the marketplace. But sometimes leadership is so focused on the product
mhm.
and they're looking for places to trim, and they may outsource customer success, they may trim it down, and all of a sudden, there's a burden that has been shifted back on the client.
Mhm.
And the client is now responsible for their own support, their own onboarding, and let me tell you, they notice that. So, I have seen that go down before, so what you
Wow.
just said resonated very deeply with me. Can you unpack a little bit when you have seen that go down in the marketplace, if there's been an acquisition that maybe the new owners didn't quite understand the there there?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been in a company that was acquired, and the whole process, there's a lot of people who had mixed feelings about it. They're saying, "I'm excited that my pay is gonna increase, but I just don't know what it's gonna be like working for the new company. I don't know if they're going to, make a lot of cuts." But, there was a lot of, hopeful optimism. For others, they were more, other people are a little bit more, skeptical, I'd say, and giving themselves almost a timeline before they dip out. But some of the things that happen as the company was being acquired, um, was they had a set of clients that were very valuable, and having those clients was a very attractive feature for the acquisition for the company. They figured, "If we keep this same company, that we're acquiring, we're gonna still keep those contracts, and we're gonna make a ton of money and make a lot of good work with them." But what I was experiencing more so through that time, um, was there were a lot of different budget cuts to certain crucial things. We were seeing fewer and fewer, onboarding trainers, very few, uh, sales managers actually willing to stick around, the metrics becoming basically a lot basically trying to move the metrics a lot higher, and doing it at a very unclear fashion so that we have a lot of people didn't know what they were actually trying to make. The relationships with the clients that we had were growing a little bit more thin. They were getting less time with, people that really had the time and actually cared, but instead had to go through a lot of red tape, and having the conversations in the first place, not knowing what they're going to get out of a contractual relationship, trying to find loopholes to get out of it because now too expensive for um, the the value that they're getting out of it that they used to have is very different. So I know a lot of companies that when they grow, they try to do more with less. Well, they try to do a lot more with a lot less, and boy, that was felt every conversation we had with their manager, and it was just not a pleasant place to be. So many people burned
Wow.
out. It was a crapshoot.
Yeah, you're not alone. I have seen that play out in the marketplace before. You're not alone, and it's interesting how I remember having one guest, podcast guest who was also a client of ours, talk about this, and I don't know if he mentioned it on the podcast or offline, but he made the observation that a lot of people come in thinking they've got great ideas to cut low-hanging fruit and clean the place up, and our client observed if it was low-hanging fruit, somebody would have already picked it. There's a reason it hasn't been picked. And so if you were advising an acquirer, what are 2 to 3 things you would advise them to protect to preserve the real value of the asset they're buying?
I would I would strongly suggest to keep an eye on WIFMs, what's in it for me, for both parties, of course, right? That creates a
Oh!
deal, but
What can you say that again? What's
WIFM, what's in
with
it for me?
I like that.
Yeah, it becomes helpful when you need to prioritize yourself and your life gets busy. The other piece is who are the particular people that are championing and really leading the voice of the customer to really understand and take time to look at, what's really happening with what we're doing. How can we do it better, so that our customer is being focused on? I think also having an investor to get involved with some of the onboarding experiences, just on the background, see what it's like to go through the beginning, middle, and end process, and what kind of problems they're being seen, just to really get to know the customer in a better way, not just shave face, just look nice and professional. Oh, this guy is here. He's so awesome, but really trying to do a lot of the work, that not a lot of people will see. And and take time to get to know that the folks that you might not feel like it'd be worth their time. Like with the lower sales manager, or onboarding sales professionals, or someone in operations, someone in HR that doesn't get looked at very much, and help them know that you really do care about them and you're going to prove it. And don't just make those words, fulfill your promises, because they do take note, and they are they're afraid that you're going to try to swipe them out, to save face, and there are consequences to that. Many of them for companies I worked with that were getting lots of cuts in the tech field. Um, there's trim the fat, right? Is a typical statement a lot of people use.
Yeah.
Well, they trimmed muscle too.
Ooh.
Some of Learn who your core professionals and salespeople are, so that you can not only regard by their metrics how they're doing, but really get to know um, it's not the objective information. Get notes to some of the subjective information, and try to let people feel comfortable being honest about it. You know,
Ooh.
be comfortable with the uncomfortable, to know there's things that are negative, but uh, don't be so averse to it that people know not to bring up anything negative to you. There's a lot of those
Wow.
things that really come out that played where, when I know that there's companies really trying to take heart and to understand and listen, and follow through, and and keeping to their word, I think great things are going to happen for that company. There's always going to be success for those people who do that.
Oh my goodness. There was a lot that you just packed into there that was incredibly valuable. So I would encourage my listeners to just hit that back button a couple times there. One thing that you said that I loved was going through just kind of tagging along with the customer onboarding process. And it reminded me of a situation that actually my dad lived through when he was selling high tech enterprise solutions in the computer industry.
Mhm,
And these are massive mainframe computers way back in the day. And there was one large sale that was on the line, and it was between him and his team and the incumbent. I believe there's a really big incumbent. And
mm,
one of the things that helped get this sale over the finish line, I guess it wasn't an incumbent, so it was 2 new contenders. So it was 2 new contenders. It was my dad's company and his team of sellers, and then a competitor in the marketplace. And the competitor had a bigger brand, bigger logo. There was a lot going on for them. They were kind of the safer option.
mhm.
And my dad encouraged the prospect to do one thing, and that is call the tech support line. Call tech
Oh,
support. And he gave him the
yeah.
phone, and the phone's in the middle of the table, and the guy picks it up and tries calling tech support of the big great name competitor. And he got rerouted so many times, it was impossible to get a human. Meanwhile, my
Mm,
dad said, "Okay, now try ours." And he had a human on the line in 15 seconds. And my dad made the point, if this is how they treat you when they're trying to get your money, what do you think they're gonna treat you like after they get it? Done.
yeah.
That was it.
Sold. Take my
Yep.
money.
Yes, and I remember seeing on LinkedIn, and I wish I could remember who. So if this was you, anybody listening, please tell me. Somebody that I was following on LinkedIn pointed out, if you're a CEO, try calling the number on your website. Try calling the number that's on your own website. How
Yeah,
easy is it for you to get in touch with your own company? If you were a prospect or a prospective client trying to get in touch with your company, what would that experience be? And it's interesting how we don't often think to do that.
yeah,
It's but it's a thing. And so I love what you were saying about riding along with the customer when they're going through the onboarding process, or there are things that are coming up that aren't in the SOPs.
right. Right. It just brings to mind a really good example on this. Jeff Bezos. He had a really he was known, for being very accessible, for one thing, but also listening in on customer service calls. He was the one
Really?
listening and taking insight, taking notes. How are things doing? How are you doing? From that perspective. And he would spend lots of time of his day doing that, to understand what's the voice of the customer. who are we best fitted for? How are we proving value in this or that? And making sure he's not losing sight of that with all the other meetings on his plate, because I think that's one of the huge things that denoted that particular business to be successful as it is today. Now they've got their own pharmaceutical campaigns. Now they've got their own delivery system. They have expectations around their brand and are running so much that people can rely on them knowing this is going to stick around for a long time, and they know what I want. Some points they might know too much about what we want, right? but
Yep. A little
but
creepy.
yes, but at the end of the day, um, if you have robots doing it, people will notice. But if you have humans doing it,
Yes.
people will feel that.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And you just tapped into something that is near and dear to my heart, which is every executive is hoping for the death of a salesman brought about by AI. They're hoping to replace the humans with AI. And I know that in what you were describing, sometimes as they're hoping to trim the fat, it's very tempting to be able to replace those super expensive humans with AI bots. And I would love to get your thoughts. What would you tell a founder who wants AI to remove the human part of selling specifically?
Oh gosh, I think they're looking at the wrong person. I think they need to think introspectively and consider is is that really going to give you the return investment you're looking for?
Oh,
Almost think about this might be a little harsh, but think about removing themselves from this situation
nice.
because if anything, sales is a transference of emotion. Bots do not have emotion. They can only rehash and get sense of information from different models and patterns that are seen. Right? There's a lot of things that can come from that.
Right.
But if they're thinking that way, I would say pull back, if not pull yourself out. Pull back and think about what you could do to enable your sales folks to do more, to take out a little bit more of those menial tasks that they don't need to spend so much time on. Maybe note taking, maybe understanding the deal process, maybe automating some parts of the function of the process, but never take them out on the key part of the helm of the conversations because things change all the time. Customers do a lot of things in queues. There's a lot that goes around the customer relationship and in sales process that a bot just simply cannot pick up on, and they won't.
Right.
Uh,
And I would emphasize what you said a moment ago about the transfer of emotion. There's a phrase that my dad and I always repeat when we're working with our clients. That is, and it's been said a million different ways out in the marketplace. We make decisions emotionally. We're humans. That's how we make decisions. Even those of us who are incredibly rational decision makers, we
yeah,
still have human emotion that plays into our decision, and then we justify it later rationally. And your
it's true.
prospects are doing exactly the same thing.
It's true. I actually just had a call last week. Someone who has not had health insurance for a while since 26 rolled off of her parents' plan. And then because it's becoming inconvenient to deal with being a self-pay individual, to get a surgery done, it's taking months to get that taken. There's not many people who are willing to take her. She's willing to pay $400 to $500, a 28-year-old,
Wow.
$400 to $500 per month just to off the deal off of that inconvenience that was getting in the way for her to get a surgery done.
Wow.
That was an emotional decision that she's trying to rationalize. I just don't see it working out very well.
Right.
I think there's different reasons you wanna do it, but that's another thing that a bot wouldn't really necessarily pick up on is what are the real pain points and what's the inconvenience it's causing if nothing changes, right?
Right.
Bots
I
can't pick
love
up
that.
on that very well.
No, no, that's a very good way to put it. Um, Matt, I'm aware that I need to honor your time, and you've been so generous in sharing your insights and your time with us. So I do need to land the plane, even though
Mhm.
I have a ton of questions I would love to ask you. 'Cause you got
Yeah,
fabulous insights. So let me wrap it up with a lightning round here. And
uh,
I'm curious if a company, let's say a company is stuck, they're stagnant, what is and you suspect that there has perhaps been a drift away from our core value, away from maybe that customer-centric focus. What is one question that you would encourage the leadership team to ask that is customer-centric that can reorient strategy fast?
Yeah, I would say, do are we being good to our own people? Do we know them? And are we taking the time to understand what they truly need?
I love that. That's amazing. On that, um, I wanna thank you so much for your time. This is awesome. Where can people find you if they want to follow up with you and,
Yeah,
learn a little bit more about what you do?
yeah. So I'm very active on different social medias. So if you want to look up www.linkedin.com/in/Matt J. You can find me there in my personal profile. Happy to connect to uh, discuss how we can best work with each other, help each other solve problems that there are looming in the small business world as entrepreneurs, and basically see how we can help each other because givers gain in this function. I'm always happy to help. You can also find me on Facebook. If you look up Johnson Health and Life or MJ Health and Life, you will see me on either modes. However, I am over at Johnson Health and Life. So feel free to connect me there. I'd be happy to reach out and see where we can help each other.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Matt. That's Johnson Health and Life, and a wealth of business insights and great answers to, I'm sure, many, many questions in that space that your clients may have. So thank you very
Mhm.
much. I very
Happy to
much
hear it. Thank
appreciate
you.
you being here. Thank you. It's been a privilege to have you as a guest, and
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing too.
thank you. It's near and dear to my heart. There's the human side of selling is a variable, and I was a science kid when I was growing up, and I don't like variables I can't control, and I am I'm a mother of 3 teenagers. There's a lot of variables I cannot control in my
Yep,
life,
just say the
and
word teenager, you know it.
yes, exactly, and I think as executives, when we're running companies, we want to control all the variables, we wanna control the outcomes, and the less human variability there is, the better, and yet
I
that's
feel
not
like it
how it
creates
actually
it's a false
works.
sense of security, yeah.
It
I
is,
think
it
I
is.
think I think overall too, if I might give a last note here on this,
Yeah, please do.
I think a lot of the business structure and way it's done is the stem of the CEO and the head leadership of the company. I think if they can take the time to work on themselves, do the deep shadow work, understand some of those tendencies and where things might go awry, I think that'll do a lot to also help heal their organization because a lot of things we do hurt people. I think if we can take the
Right.
time to really understand that, get a good coach to look at the things we're not looking at and make that investment, there's so much more you can do for yourself and the people you lead.
That is beautiful, and it is so true. That is so true. Matt, thank you. It's been an honor to have you here today. Listeners, speaking of human to human connection, if you know somebody who might enjoy this, please share the episode with them. That's really where the best organic growth comes from is human to human contact. So please feel free to share this with people that you know, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.